Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The icy November wind whistled through the streets of Midtown, New York, rattling advertising posters and driving chilly passers-by against shop windows. Amidst this urban bustle, the small restaurant, Caldwell's Diner, shone with its welcoming facade, a warm light filtering through its large windows. Inside, all seemed calm, almost too calm for a weekday morning. Sarah Johnson, 25, served the tables with quiet professionalism. Her movements were fluid, her smile genuine, but her eyes betrayed the fatigue and hardships of the past few months. She knew every regular customer by name, every order by heart, and, above all, she still believed in the goodness of people, despite the injustices she had already witnessed. That day, an old man in rags timidly approached the entrance, shivering in the light rain. His clothes were dirty and torn, and his graying beard was tangled. Without thinking, Sarah went up to him, offered him a hot coffee and a still-warm sandwich. "Here, take this. You must be hungry," she said gently. The man looked up in surprise, then a fragile smile lit up his weathered face. thank you so much, young lady," he murmured, his voice trembling. But behind her, in the shadows of the counter, Richard Caldwell, the restaurant owner, watched her with a mixture of anger and disbelief. To him, every move Sarah made that didn't immediately generate profit was an affront to his authority. "What are you doing?" he yelled, drawing the attention of all the customers. "You're wasting food on bums. Get out." Sarah's face flushed red. She felt her hands tremble, her legs weaken. The whispers of the other customers resonated like blows to her chest. She lowered her head, gathered her belongings, and left the restaurant, her heart heavy and her soul bruised. At that precise moment, Sarah had no idea that this act of kindness toward a stranger would change her life in unimaginable ways. For in this unforgiving world, sometimes, kindness becomes an invisible force capable of overturning fate itself. The days that followed were pure hell for Sarah Johnson. Every morning, she woke up with a mixture of bitterness and fear. The small apartment she rented in Brooklyn, a cramped studio with walls yellowed by time, seemed even smaller and colder without the meager salary she earned from her old job. The morning coffee no longer tasted as comforting as it once had, and the sunlight through the dusty curtains seemed harsh and unforgiving. Sarah spent her first few weeks sending out resumes indiscriminately. Responses were few and far between, and when she did receive them, they were often tinged with condescension. "We've found someone with more experience," they would say. Each rejection drove the blade of humiliation that Richard Caldwell had plunged into her heart that morning a little deeper. Yet, despite her fatigue and discouragement, Sarah didn't give up. She took odd jobs here and there, waiting tables in crowded cafes, cleaning offices in the evenings, delivering meals. Every job, however modest, was a chance to survive and maintain her dignity. She had never wanted anyone's pity. And then there was Henry Thompson. The old man with the sandwich and the hot coffee. Sarah had almost forgotten him in the whirlwind of her new life, but he hadn't forgotten her. A disgraced former businessman, Henry watched Sarah from afar, touched by her selfless kindness. He saw in her a rarity in a world often cruel, and he decided not to remain a mere spectator to her fate. One afternoon, as Sarah was returning home, exhausted, she saw Henry sitting on a bench in the park. He recognized her immediately and beckoned her over. "Sarah," he said softly, "I have never forgotten what you did for me. Your kindness deserves better than misery." These words, simple yet powerful, rekindled a glimmer of hope in Sarah's heart. She didn't yet know how this man would change her life, but somewhere deep inside, she felt that something important was about to happen. She clenched her fists, determined never again to let the cruelty of others define her worth. This ordeal, however painful, would become the starting point of a path that would take her further than she could ever have imagined. 6 months had passed since that humiliating morning at the restaurant. Sarah Johnson had been through some dark times, but she was beginning to regain a strength she thought she had lost. Then, one spring afternoon, her phone rang. An unknown number appeared on the screen. Hesitant but curious, she answered. "Hello, this is Henry Thompson. Do you remember me?" The voice, soft but firm, made Sarah's heart beat faster. She remembered perfectly that man, trembling on the park bench, whom she had helped without expecting anything in return. "Yes, of course, Henry. How are you?" she replied, her voice betraying a touch of emotion. Henry wasted no time. "I have a proposal for you. I run an important charitable project in New York, and I would like you to be the executive assistant. Your kindness, integrity, and intelligence would be invaluable assets to us." Sarah remained silent for a few seconds, breathless. She never would have imagined that a simple gesture towards a stranger could open such an incredible door. After a moment of silence, she accepted, her heart pounding and her eyes shining with excitement mixed with apprehension. A few days later, she walked through the doors of a luxurious downtown building to go to Henry's office. Everything was new, elegant, and organized, but what struck her most was the human atmosphere. Here, people were respectful, attentive, and sincere. Sarah, with her experience as a waitress and her ability to read others' emotions, adapted quickly. She soon found herself immersed in a world she had never known, organizing lavish charity galas, meeting influential figures, negotiating partnerships with companies, and above all, providing help to those in need. Each day was a lesson, and Sarah absorbed everything with eagerness and humility. But fate, as always, had its own plans. At a prestigious fundraising gala, Sarah saw a familiar face among the guests. Her heart sank. Richard Caldwell, the boss who had humiliated and fired her, was there, dressed in an expensive suit, still unaware of her true identity. That night, Sarah realized something important. Life had the power to transform pain into opportunity, humiliation into strength, and kindness into success. She didn't need revenge to triumph, she simply had to keep moving forward, with dignity and courage. The charity gala was in full swing at the Grand Manhattan Hotel, with its sparkling chandeliers and elegantly dressed guests. Laughter, hushed conversations, and the clinking of glasses created an atmosphere of sophistication and opulence. Sarah Johnson, impeccable in her simple yet elegant black dress, moved with grace, coordinating the details of the event and ensuring that everything ran perfectly. Henry Thompson, true to form, discreetly observed Sarah. He knew that this evening would be important, not only for fundraising, but also to show the world the extraordinary person she had become. Then, in a corner of the room, Sarah's gaze fell upon a face she hadn't forgotten. Richard Caldwell. Her former boss stood there, perfectly made up and confident, chatting with other businessmen. The memories of her humiliation flashed through her, the shouting, the public shaming, the restaurant door slamming shut behind her. Henry, noticing the tension, approached and said softly, "Sarah, do you remember what you did for me?" She nodded, clasping her hands behind her back. "Yes, and look where it's led us." When Richard saw Sarah approaching, he didn't recognize her immediately. But when Henry introduced her, "Allow me to present Sarah Johnson, executive director of our philanthropic project," an icy silence fell over Richard. The guests turned their attention to her, admiring her poise and aura of success. Richard's shock was palpable. The man who had humiliated her 6 months earlier now stood before him, transformed into a figure of authority and respect. Every word she spoke, every gesture she made, reflected the professionalism and dignity he had once crushed. Sarah felt no desire for revenge. On the contrary, she simply smiled, serene, aware that life had offered her its most powerful revenge, that of success and respect. Richard, humiliated by fate and witness to his own mistake, could only remain frozen, unable to look away. That evening marked a turning point. Sarah had proven that kindness and perseverance triumphed over cruelty and arrogance. Her act of kindness toward a stranger, performed without expecting anything in return, had paved the way for a complete transformation of her life. And Richard, for his part, had to confront the harsh reality that his past actions had irreversible consequences. A few weeks after the gala, Sarah's life had completely changed. Her name was now respected in New York's philanthropic circles, and her reputation as an honest and dedicated professional grew daily. She had found financial stability, but more importantly, she had gained recognition and esteem that no past humiliation could take away. Richard Caldwell, for his part, was suffering the consequences of his choices. The restaurant he had run with authoritarianism and arrogance was seeing its clientele gradually disappear. Criticism on social media and in local newspapers highlighted his cruel treatment of employees and customers. The best waiters and chefs were leaving the establishment, leaving Caldwell to struggle with increasingly chaotic management. One day, he received an invitation to a charity event organized by Henry Thompson. Curious and still convinced of his superiority, he went, not expecting to see Sarah again. But when he saw the bright and confident young woman with Henry, reality hit him hard. The numerous and influential guests applauded Sarah for her role in the project's success. Richard realized he was no longer in a position of power, life had reversed the roles. Sarah hadn't needed direct revenge to triumph. Her success, her elegance, and her kindness had spoken for her, eclipsing her past pain and silently humiliating the one who had hurt her. A few months later, Caldwell's restaurant closed its doors for good. Richard, ruined and isolated, could only contemplate the void left by his mistakes and Sarah's quiet grandeur. She, for her part, continued to move forward, guided by her kindness, resilience, and inner strength. Sarah Johnson had proven a simple yet powerful truth: true victory lies not in revenge, but in transforming one's own life through integrity, perseverance, and compassion. This act of kindness toward a stranger had set in motion a chain of events that changed her destiny forever. And in the streets of New York, his name became synonymous with hope, strength, and quiet success, reminding everyone that goodness, even when it seems anonymous and insignificant, possesses an invincible power.